The College Planning Edge. Multiply your odds of getting into your dream college and get your hands on thousands of dollars of fat, juicy scholarships. Brought to you by Lockwood College Prep, helping college-bound families get the edge in college admissions, financial aid, scholarships, and test prep.
Of how to qualify for financial aid and scholarships. Welcome. My name is Andy Lockwood from Lockwood College Prep, and I'm here to run you through some how to qualify for. That's my other monitor, making sure that things are beaming out. So if you can hear me okay and see everything, please introduce yourselves in chat. Say hi. Let us know where you're from. That is always cool for us to see, where people tune in from. Pearl is womaning the chat behind the scenes. She is also, as a sort of reward for you in terms of showing up on time, she's posting what I promised you, which was an opportunity to get a copy of my book for free. How to pay, we just revised that, how to pay wholesale for college. So let's see here. All right. I see Jim from Dobbs Ferry, Brooke from Avon, Suzanne from Philly, Diane from North Carolina, Colleen from Manhasset. Yes, the mysterious Colleen. David from somewhere, other David, probably from California, Randy, Long Island, Andy looking snazzy, Colleen. That's so funny, sort of. I had a photo of me, I guess, when I went to the U.S. Open a couple of weeks ago, and a friend of mine, I was wearing this shirt, and a friend of mine said something like, "Hey, you look great in pistachio." That was, by the way, Pearl, that was Hal Lieberman, in case you're wondering. God. Yeah, from Minnesota. So anyway, okay, good. Sounds like we're coming in loud and clear. So here's what's going to happen. I'm gonna run through a quick presentation. Probably keep it to under an hour. That's the intent. I want to respect everyone's time for joining us. And you're going to hear a lot of stuff that's different than what you probably have heard from other parents or other perhaps guidance counselors or people like that. So just all I ask is that you keep an open mind. Don't shut down what you just because it sounds different. And I will be answering questions. Pearl's going to be kind of helping with that. And I'll stop in a few minutes to go over them once they get to a stopping point. Okay. So now I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which always makes my heart drop a little bit. And I'm going to go right into, actually, I don't even need these, financial aid and scholarship secrets exposed. So if you can see my slides, let me know. It looks okay in my monitor. So good. Tan. Oh, you said I'm looking tan. Colleen. That's funny. It's a spray tan. I did it for the webinar. All right, good. Okay, let's go. So here's what you're going to discover today. Loopholes and landmines to slash college costs, even if you think, what's the use? Or maybe you have stronger language. We'll never qualify for anything. I'm going to cover way more than 12 mistakes to avoid. I'm going to go over a couple of case studies of successful negotiations with colleges, and I'm going to have special tips for special categories, business owners and divorced families. Who is this for? This is for parents who have no friggin' idea how on God's green earth they'll be able to cough up $70,000 per year per kid, or parents who have the money. They just don't see the value or the return on investment in paying full boat. I think that is questionable at best. It's also for any parent who admits that they really don't have a clue about where to start, or they're just stressed out about any of the stuff, getting into college, paying for college, you name it. So if any of these or all of these describe you, you are in the right place. So just for a moment, imagine you had a magic wand and you could comfortably afford your child's dream college with zero stress or sleepless nights about how you're possibly going to pay, and without satelliting your kid or you with college loan payments for the indeterminate future. How great would that feel? That's really what we're trying to do tonight. The flip side of that is if you don't pay attention and you don't take notes and you don't implement the advice I'm going to be giving you. You have to kind of ask yourself, well, are you willing to risk crushing your kid's dreams by telling her you can't afford to send her to the college that she worked her butt to get into? She did her part. Are you going to do your part? You have the opportunity now. Will your kid end up buried in hundreds of thousands of dollars of high-rate, high-fee college loans? Are you okay just needlessly forking your cash over to these rip-off colleges, possibly delaying your retirement for years while you struggle to pay off your loans or maybe your kids' loans? That's why this is important. Now, I do see a lot of familiar faces in the chat, but I know there's plenty of people who don't know who we are. So just really quick before we get into the actual instructional stuff here, maybe wondering who are the Lockwoods, who are Pearl and Andy, why should we pay attention? So 3 best-selling books, including the one that you can still download for a few more minutes as a reward for your punctuality. I'm also a sort of a paid trainer or coach to other financial advisors who want to learn about how to navigate the college financial aid system. And frankly, we get terrific client results, which is, to me, the only really important thing on this slide here. I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory because I don't always do this, but a lot of times people ask me how I got into this business. So back when I was attending college, I went to the, thank you very much, 4th most expensive school at the time, at Wesleyan University. And my dad, who was a photojournalist, this is a photo of him with, you can probably recognize Fidel over there. My dad wrote a book about Fidel Castro, and he did a lot of other really high-profile things, but he was a freelance photographer, and he didn't really make a lot of money. By the time I was born, he had diabetes, and he was disabled and very low income. But he was a do-it-yourselfer type of guy, which was, as far as my mom was concerned, a disaster when he did taxes. He would just have all these piles of paperwork. He wasn't very organized, never did anything on time. My guess is that he didn't really see the value of hiring an accountant or other experts. So his attitude with me and loans and financial aid was, you know what, just go to the best school that you can. We'll figure it out. It's going to work out. Don't worry about it. This is how it worked out. It really didn't. Racked up 6 figures worth of debt and struggled with all kinds of, I wasn't always able to make the payments. So crazy, credit issues and all sorts of stuff. And that's, why I say my dad didn't have a me. I don't know if he would have even paid attention to a me back then. But now I want you to know that I went through all these struggles. I learned all this stuff the hard way. You don't have to. If you pay attention to what I'm going to say tonight, you're going to fast track and shortcut all that horrible stuff. And frankly, one of the things that got us into this field is, we have 4 kids of our own, Pearl and I, and we swore to each other and to them that they would never go through anything remotely like what I went through. And if you're having trouble, for those of you trying to do the math here, that there actually are 4 kids here. That's not another head growing out of Pearl, a mini me head. That's that's her mini me daughter, Sammy. So. Anyway, but in terms of our clients, these are the types of results we always get for clients. This is a nice testimonial from Stephanie Salzbank from Port Washington. She was worried that none of her friends got financial aid, and then she started getting her offers from her daughter's great schools that she was hoping to get into, like Ithaca and BU. My friend said, "I can't understand how you receive so much in assistance." Well, I got nothing. I even had the Fafsa people, whatever that means, fill out the forms. And Stephanie said, thank you. You made this whole process so easy, less stressful, and downright fun. All the loopholes. So that's one example. We also help kids get into college with the essays and applications. This is a text I got from Julie Perellis down in Hewlett, who was just gushing that she was told by the Cornell admissions officer that her kid's application stood out, and she gave me a lot of credit for making those possible. This is very cool. Dennis O'Hara is a superintendent, and he says he knows a lot of college planners who promise results but don't deliver. In your case, I got real results, and he gets thanked by parents to recommend him. Here's the craziest testimonial I ever got, then we'll get into the presentation. Fake Donald Trump just loved the work that we fake did for him. So, okay. Moving along. Let me make an obvious point here. The less you spend on college, the more money you have for other stuff. And that's really what this is all about. You have more money for retirement. You have more money for paying off your mortgage if you're that crazy. You have, you can do fun stuff like take vacations or eat out more or buy jet skis. I don't really care what you do. You'll just have more to be able to do that. You can do anything other than just giving it to these rip-off colleges. So where do you start? And a lot of people, you may also be in this group. You've heard about all these forms, the Fafsa. That's just one of several hard to figure out acronyms. This process is crazy complicated, and I personally think it's for no reason. But when you get the government involved, that's what happens. Things get out of hand. So you may be willing to throw up the white flag or the equivalent of the white flag, and that's you shouldn't do that. But I don't blame you. It's totally not your fault. You shouldn't expect any help from. People do this, but unfortunately, they shouldn't expect any help from guidance counselors or accountants or financial guys, and I'll get into that more in a couple of minutes. This is one of the reasons why. This is the regulatory scheme, the simplified view behind the FAFSA, which is the easier form. This is what it looks like. There's other stuff that's really stacking the odds against being successful in this product. Other factors here. Tuition has skyrocketed compared to literally every other industry, cost of living or medical care and all that, and it's continuing to go up. A lot of experts predict that student loans are the next bubble to burst with repercussions that are going to ripple throughout the economy. I don't have a crystal ball, but I understand what they're saying. There's other challenges that our kids, I have kids the same age as you, most likely, who are facing 50% of college grads are underemployed, meaning they don't have jobs that require college degrees even 2 years after they graduate. That's crazy. 93% of employers in polls and hiring managers say that college grads are completely unprepared for the workforce. Student loan defaults are out of hand. They're supposedly slowing, but I think a lot of that has to do with these income-based repayment plans, which really just kind of kick the can down the road, and ultimately taxpayers, I think, are going to be the ones that are going to pick up the rest of the discharged loans. But the defaults are still very, very high. And that's why you should understand that you got to take this seriously because the odds are stacked against you. So I'm going to zip through 5 secret ways that colleges and the Department of Education are out to get you, and then we're going to go through some tips once you understand, the playing field here. Some tips that you can use to beat these colleges and the government at their own sick game. Because in financial aid, it's the responsible middle-class families who do things like live below their means who are punished for doing the right thing, while irresponsible families are rewarded for doing the wrong thing. I'm not saying this to be political. I think I'm being there's different ways to look at this, but I think this is really straightforward and factual, and you'll see what I mean. Here's one example. Home equity. The trap of owning a home. Now, I'm guessing people, you may be one of them on this presentation, think that if you own a home, it doesn't count against you. It's not supposed to count against you. That is partially true. It's not completely true because more than 400 colleges actually penalize you for owning a home. In other words, they expect you to be able to tap that equity, maybe an equity line, maybe refinancing, to be able to use as an asset to pay for college. So what they do is, if you have equity in your house, they treat you as if you have that money ready, willing, and able to use to pay for college, and they reduce your eligibility by that amount. So there is a penalty for owning a home and having a low mortgage and paying it off. And frankly, it's not just the colleges. The government would rather lend you their high-rate, high-fee loans as opposed to encouraging you to use some, lower rate options and possibly even tax-deductible options like your home. And why do you think that is? Look at how much interest they make on student loans. I've seen studies that say that it's more than $1.5 billion per year. It's a lot of profit there. So that's one reason why the odds are stacked against you if you own a home. Secret number 2, colleges punish you in general for having a living, paying your bills, and saving money. But I will show you how to level the playing field. Third secret is that some savings that you can use, you can avail yourself of, don't count against you at all. They're completely penalty free. There are actually 4 exempt loopholes. I call it 4.5 exempt loopholes in the financial aid formulas that I will go over with you in a few minutes. The 4th secret is you'll never hear about these loopholes except by chance. If you just happen to have stumbled across this webinar, you're not going to hear them from guidance counselors who, frankly, are not trained in the nuances of financial aid. And the average ratio of kid to counselor is something like 500 to 1 nationally. In New York, where we are, it's in the 400s to 1. And even at the private schools, we have a lot of kids who attend private school. The ratios are better, but still the issue is that guidance counselors and college people at private high schools are not trained. They don't really focus on the money aspect of it. So you're not going to get help from them. CPAs and accountants, they are ostensibly experts in the tax code, but it's a lot of work for them to keep up. They have their hands full, and there's a big change going on right now. So to ask them to then also delve into the college financial aid rules and regulations is a tall order. And I have conversations all the time with accountants about certain things that they didn't know, even with their own kids. And Pearl and I have a half a dozen or so accountants as clients every year who just say, we don't want to deal with this. Just, take care of it for us. We don't want to make a mistake. So I'm going to share some of those little tidbits with you. So you will be smarter than some accountants about financial aid once we wrap up the hour here. And then there's financial advisors who put themselves, hang out a shingle and say, hey, we do college planning too. But really what they're doing is selling products and earning a commission. In many cases, I'm sure there's some good financial advisors out there who don't do that. I am not a financial advisor. I don't sell any products, but personally, I felt that there was a little bit of a conflict. I'd rather just give straightforward advice and then refer to a financial advisor or work with the client's financial advisor. So again, it's a whole new financial advisors not only have a different incentive than doing what's in your best interest, no matter how you slice it. But frankly, they have a lot to keep up with their own compliance stuff. So it's hard for them to delve into financial aid also. Okay. And colleges won't tell you because they're businesses. Their agendas are different than your agenda. You may be swayed by college websites talking about how inclusive they are and how they want to give the best education, the best price. Okay, that's partially true, but they also have to they care very much about their U.S. News and World Report rank. They look at that every year. As soon as that magazine comes out, all the trustees and the president and, the directors, they're all, immediately looking. And then so they can brag about it and therefore attract more candidates, more applicants who pay application fees. The alumni, are a whole body that has another agenda. If they give a lot of money, they have a big say in who gets admitted and who doesn't. Diversity is a big thing, and that's a very hot topic right now in terms of what's happening legally these days. So colleges, have a lot of them have these diversity quotas or quasi quotas, whatever you want to call them. They're constantly after money from the federal government for researching stuff. Frankly, it's like unreadable, barely publishable, obscure scientific stuff that doesn't get cited by other scientists, but it's designed in order to win grants for research. So they care about all this stuff that's got really nothing to do with quality of education or how successful a kid is after college, and they care about something called enrollment management, which is how they leverage or allocate scholarships and financial aid to students that they want more than others. So you may be thinking, you look at all this stuff and think to yourself, it's just not fair. And my answer is right. Who said it's supposed to be fair? If you're applying to college and you're looking at your college list, you're looking at Naviance or whatever you use, and you think, okay, I have a pretty good shot at getting in here because my grades and scores seem to be within reason. That's only the start of the conversation. The rest of the conversation is, are you an underrepresented minority? Are you a legacy? All these other types of things that can bear on your ability to get in. That's outside the scope of this presentation, but I just want you to understand that there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you've never thought about, probably, when it comes to how colleges make decisions, both in terms of admitting kids and giving money out. And you just need to be aware that you don't know what you don't know. So let's go over some little known facts that you may not know, but You will now. The average discount, whether it's merit-based or need-based, is 49.1%, and that's according to the National Association of Collegiate Business Officers. It's not coming from me. That's average. The average discount nationally is almost half off. Fact number 2, most aid goes to parents who are in the top 25% of income earners in the country. It's six-figure earning families. And look, I know some of you are probably going to have questions about why. Let me just get through the presentation, and then, like I said, in a few minutes, I'll stop for questions. Okay, this is very important to understand. 25% versus 75%. At any given school, roughly 25% plus or minus, only 25% pay full boat, pay sticker price. They are subsidizing the other 75%. Most people are getting some sort of assistance. That is why I constantly say, and Pearl says the same thing, it's your choice to pay full price. You don't have to. You don't have to go to a school where you're going to pay full price. You don't have to choose to pay to be a sucker. Colleges can fudge things all the time. I was just at a conference maybe a month and a half ago where I was kind of, I wouldn't say complaining, but I was kind of bemoaning to an admissions officer, the head of admissions, I think, from the University of South Carolina, where I said something like, look, it's very irritating to me that when I go look up what the requirements are for merit scholarships, it's always wishy-washy. It's usually something like, the recipients of the presidential scholarship tended to have GPAs of blah, 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 and tended to be in the top blah, 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 their classes and had SAT or ACT scores of, that bothers me because there's no real recipe. So I said, why is this? And she said something that kind of made me feel dumb for asking. She didn't mean it that way. She said, look, if we were to publish the exact criteria, like a recipe for what it took to get this money, then we would get way more applications that met those criteria, and we'd be forced to give that money out, and we can't afford to do it. Okay, so that's the reason they do this, but what I'm saying is that a lot of stuff can be fudged. So merit scholarships can be fudged if a college wants you badly enough, and so are need-based grants. Those can be fudged also. It's all based on the college's agenda. So just because you may think you're going to qualify, or you may think you're not going to qualify, or you went on the net price calculator of a college and you thought, I have a good shot, and then you don't get anything, or sometimes it works the other way around. Again, it's because there's some stuff that you can control, and there's some stuff that, particularly the college's institutional agenda, that you cannot control, and you have to learn how to play the game. So here's how it all works. So you can get the money that you deserve. Here's the formula. And this is a writer downer for if you haven't seen this before. Even if you have seen this before, I think you should still take some notes here because you'll retain it better. So the formula is COA minus EFC equals your need. Cost of attendance is COA. That stands for tuition plus room and board and all fees for 1 year. So tuition might be $50. When you add everything else, you might be looking at $65,000, $70,000 for a cost of attendance. The main thing here that we're going to focus on for the next couple of slides is the expected family contribution. It's expected, not estimated. It's expected family contribution. So that is the amount that the government feels in its wisdom and glory that you can afford for 1 year of college. Doesn't mean anything other than it's an estimate of what the government thinks you can afford. Doesn't mean you'll pay that. Doesn't mean you won't pay that. It's just a formula. And then what's left over is your financial need, and that's the difference between the two. That's what the financial aid formula indicates that you are eligible for. But I want you to pay attention. That is not necessarily what you'll actually receive in financial aid or what you will pay formula in financial aid. These are just formulas and averages and all that. So a lot of times, Pearl did something like 300 forms last year for our clients, and someone will have an EFC and they'll be like, what? I can't afford to pay that, or oh good, I get to pay that. In both cases, they're wrong. It's colleges can apply these formulas differently. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the big idea or the most important thing in that formula is this expected family contribution, because the lower your EFC, the more aid you get. It's based on many factors, but the most important ones, and everything I'm saying here and I'm about to say, is a gross oversimplification. It is not comprehensive. Trust me, you don't want that. I wouldn't want to do that. I need to wrap up before 3 a.m. Okay. But generally, this is the important stuff. You will be way ahead of the pack once you understand this stuff. So income, assets or savings, and other assets, your parents' number of children in college at the same time, those are very important. So I know I'm going to get some questions on that. Feel free to ask them. I will get to them in a few minutes. Here is just a simple kind of 2 different scenarios. And what this illustrates is that if you can figure out a way to lower your expected family contribution, so in this example, the EFC is $60,000, and the cost of attendance is also $60,000, therefore the family is showing need of 0. But if you can figure out how to lop about $15,000 off from your EFC and drop it from $60,000 to $45,000, now all of a sudden you're eligible for $15,000 a year, which is a 30% discount per year. So the real money adds up here. So let me just take a quick sip of water here. If you understand this so far, just this simple math, specifically the concept about if you lower your EFC, you'll increase your eligibility. If you understand that, give me a Y in chat, Y for yes. So lower your EFC, the more need you're going to show, the more eligibility you'll have. And that means more money. Just to connect the dots for you. So if you understand that type of why. Oh, got a question from, all right, I'm seeing a lot of whys here. I saw Brett say that the book download is gone. Yeah, we had it up for the first 10 minutes just to encourage people to show up on time. So it's now no longer available. All right, looks like you guys understand this. I got a yup from David. Apparently Y wasn't emphatic enough. All right, good. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about EFC, drill down a little bit, especially when it comes to income and savings. So what I want to show you here are the percentages that the government uses of income and of savings. And I want you to note the difference here between parent savings and child savings, because that is where the potential opportunities lie to lower your EFC. It's not so much with income. So income is penalized. And when I say penalized, it's sort of synonymous with boosting your EFC. So you remember, you want to lower EFC, but if you are penalized, they raise the amount they expect you to pay. So income is penalized between 22 to 47%, which means all income, by the way. It's not just your taxable income. It's also untaxed income. But savings, which I want to focus on right now because that's more practical, parent savings are penalized. Now, I'll explain what that means. Are penalized at 5% and change. Child savings are penalized far greater, far more, up to 25%. So if you've saved $100,000, you are penalized $5,000 if it's in your name, and $25,000 if it's in your kid's name, like a UTMA or a UJMA or a custodial account. Sometimes people ask about the 529. That is a college savings account that does count against you. Most schools will use the parent number, the 5% and change. Many schools, but not as many as the previous group, will penalize you greater than 5%, somewhere between 5 and 25%. It tends to be the private schools that have their own money and they can make their own rules. You know, the golden rule: he who has the gold can make the rules. So that is the story with 529s. But in terms of everything else that counts against you, it's really everything's in the bank, even cash, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. But then I told you before, there's some types of accounts that don't count against you, and I'm going to be getting to those once we wrap this up. So my point here is, in financial aid, it's not how much you have saved, it's where you have it saved. If it's in your name, you're penalized less. If it's in your kid's name, you're really severely punished. And there are some areas that you're not penalized at all. I mentioned income before, just to round out this discussion before we move on to some of the strategies. So income is penalized between 22 to 47%. It's a sliding scale. So if you look at $10,000, you're going to be penalized between $2,200 and $4,700. And it's all income. I mentioned that before. Sometimes people gloss over that. So I just want to emphasize it here again. My rule of thumb is take whatever you're making and take 30% of it. So if you're making $200,000, 30% of that is $60,000. That is your contribution. That is the expected family contribution from income before you get into savings and all that other type of stuff. So let's just, I didn't make a slide about this, but let's say that you have an $80,000 expected family contribution because you make $200,000 and then you have some savings. You're not going to qualify for aid anywhere unless you have more than one kid in college. So what happens frequently, and this is a mistake that I want you to avoid, is parents have an EFC of $80,000 and they've slaved over the financial aid forms and they get nothing and they're just totally, pissed off. They're like, I'm never doing that again. That's crazy. So they never do the forms again. But the mistake or the self-sabotage that could happen is in 2 years when their second son or daughter goes to college, and let's say everything else stays the same, that $80,000 gets split between the two kids. So it's actually a $40,000 contribution for each kid. It's an expected family contribution. So now all of a sudden they're eligible for those overlapping years. So if you have more than one kid in college, if you have twins, triplets, you want to adopt a kid, one of our kids maybe, then then feel free to that's not the right way, but you should definitely keep applying. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Another question we get a lot is, what's the income cutoff? There isn't an income cutoff. You can search high and low all over these crazy interwebs, and you won't find any magic ceiling that once you cross it, you're not going to be able to qualify for anything. And the reason is because there's all these other factors. But my general rule of thumb is, and I just demonstrated this to you, if you make $200,000 in income, it gets really hard to get any type of money from a private college. The closer you get to 200, the harder it is if you have only one kid in school. But if you have two kids in school, you can get a lot closer to 300 and still be eligible for need-based money. For state schools, either in the state, wherever you live, like here in New York or out of the state, you have to have a super low income to get need-based aid. So that's need-based. Merit, which I haven't talked about yet, there's actually more merit money out there than there is need-based, and that's where you might be able to really clean up if you're strategic about where you apply to college. So if you're a high-income family, if a lot of our families make $300, $500, $800 million or more, and we help them, primarily we're coaching the kids on getting into the best colleges they can get in, but we also are very good at helping them free up money to, from either from the colleges directly or for other ways. There's a lot of merit money out there. Okay. Are you with me so far? Just let me know if this is helpful. Okay, and I see that there's some connection issues, Pearl. You're helping people with that. We're not having any tech difficulties. We have a very high speed access, but sometimes when you have other stuff running in the background or other people in the house are on, Xbox, Fortnite, Facebook, Insta, whatever, that can make but there's a reconnect button right at the top if you have any issues. And Pearl's saying to shut down other browsers. Yes, she is. Colleen is crying. I hope those are tears of joy, Colleen. You seem like a very joyful person from what I remember. I don't know if it's my tan. Okay, let's talk about assets. So this is what counts against you: cash, checking and savings, stocks and bonds, and 529s. I mentioned that before, but so the question about the 529 is not whether it penalizes you, it's how much. So I can't categorically say it's bad or good, friend or foe, whatever, but I do take issue with a lot of the marketing that the financial companies did for families that otherwise would have qualified had their for aid, who socked a lot of money into a 529 and then had their eligibility reduced or eliminated because of all that savings. If income is at such a point where if it weren't for the assets, you'd be able to qualify, then you could be shooting yourself in the foot by saving money in a place that's going to count against you. That's my big issue. But it's great for some people. It's not great for others. Okay. Now We're getting into the good stuff. And by that, I mean, look at this good stuff right from the Fafsa. And what this is a kind of an enumeration of what does not count against you. Not only what counts against you, but what doesn't count against you. No, I'm not going to read this. Thought about it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to summarize it, and I'm going to run through the 4.5, not 4, exemptions, or as I call it, the 4 horsemen of financial aid. The things that don't count against you. And by the way, the other way to look at this is if you mistakenly put this stuff on your financial aid forms, you will lose eligibility. You will be shooting yourself in the foot. So these things are opportunities, but they're also landmines to avoid. All right. All retirement accounts are exempt. That means IRAs, SEP, Simple, 401k, 403b, all those accounts are completely exempt. They should not be put on the Fafsa at all. To round out that discussion, they are actually disclosable on another form, the CSS profile. You have to check with each school to figure out which forms you file. But they supposedly don't count against you on that form either. So every college takes the Fafsa. I'm going to get into this a little bit more. Some schools take an additional form, but in both cases, retirement accounts don't penalize you. You just shouldn't disclose them at all on the Fafsa, because the Fafsa asks, and I'll just go right back to this. It's really hard to read this, but if you were looking at, I guess, number 3, investments do not include the home you live in, the value of life insurance, blah, blah, blah. That's where I'm pulling all these from. So if you say, oh, I have $500,000 worth of investments and you're including your $450,000 IRA, that's a mistake that will cost you money. So retirement accounts are not penalized. Those are exempt. Your primary residence is exempt on the Fafsa. And you may be saying, well, wait a minute. I thought in one of those slides before you said there's a problem with owning a home. There is for 400 colleges that take this other form called the CSS profile. So most colleges, most of the 4,000 colleges out there don't penalize you for owning a home, but 400 of them do. So that's a partial exemption. Number 3 there, the third bullet point, are annuities. If you own an annuity and you mistakenly put that down on the Fafsa, the main financial aid form, FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. I know I'm speaking quickly, but I want to respect everyone's time. That will penalize you and cost you eligibility. On the other form, CSS profile, certain annuities are exempt and others are not exempt. So it really matters. So if a financial advisor approaches you and says, by the way, you could save some money for college if you buy an annuity from me, because they speak like that. And what you should say is, oh, well, does the college take the CSS profile or not? And he'll be like, what the hell are you talking about? I just want to sell you an annuity. So some annuities penalize you. Those are called non-retirement annuities. Those will penalize you, whereas retirement annuities will not penalize you. So you have to be just telling you this so you keep this in the back of your mind. It's a possible exemption. Then the fourth one is life insurance. Virtually every college will not penalize you for owning life insurance with cash value. So those are the 4 exemptions, and the 0.5 pertains to business owners, which you're just going to have to wait a few minutes for before I get into them. So it's retirement accounts, primary residence, annuities, and life insurance. And I'm sure we're getting questions on that. But again, I will get to them. I just want to get through the meat of the presentation. So if you are going to shelter your assets, notice how I didn't say hide, because that's sleazy. I want to give you a couple of examples and a warning. So if you have $250,000 in included assets, meaning stuff that counts against you, but you reposition it, maybe you use annuities and insurance or something else, you will then save at least $14,000, which is 5% and change in eligibility per year, just because you're moving from one bad bucket to a good bucket for financial aid purposes. However, this is our faceless legal advisor. You have to be really careful about really everything. First of all, this doesn't work for everyone. I can't, none of the stuff I'm saying works across the board categorically for everyone. So that's what my lawyer here wanted to remind me about. And the second thing is you have to look at all the potential negative consequences, which even if this could work for you, the negative consequences or considerations will drag on the total return on investment you would get. So I'll explain that. But you may be wondering, okay, it sounds kind of weird. Is this even kosher to do? So I brought in our rabbi. His name is Shlomo to answer that question. He was in the middle of, teaching class to those kids behind him. He reminded me, and I want to pass this on to you, that this is kosher just the same way as taking a tax deduction is kosher. You don't have to, you can choose whether or not to take a tax deduction, but it's been, from the Supreme Court, it's been agreed upon for centuries, maybe not quite a century, quite centuries, but decades, that it's not unpatriotic or anything bad to take a deduction or take as many deductions as you can on your tax return in order to minimize your tax burden. So too it's just as kosher to avoid overpaying for college. To me, to get as much of a discount as you're entitled to. Another similar sort of regulatory body is Medicaid. If you have a senior citizen parent who has a bunch of assets in their name, you may be thinking about, you may have already done this, you've gone to an attorney to move money out of their names in order for your senior citizen parent to qualify for more health benefits. Well, we do the same thing in financial aid. We use different tools, but we move money around to try to qualify for more education benefits. So it's really an analogy there. And I think this was an ad from an old Morgan Stanley campaign. You must pay taxes, but there's no law that says you got to leave a tip, right? So don't overpay on your tax returns, which is not what this is about. Same thing with college. Don't overpay for college. You don't have to. That's straight from the rabbi. So regular strategies that we see a lot in our office. Like I said, it's not every kid and family, but sometimes moving money of kids' names into accounts that don't count against you, the ones I mentioned before, sometimes that can really pay off. Sometimes being strategic and smart about using a mortgage or a home equity line can really pay off because the colleges are penalizing you anyway, so you might as well use it and possibly improve your eligibility. You probably have a handful of clients each year that, no more than 4 or 5 that consider that type of strategy. And then, I mentioned before, insurance and annuities seem to work a lot, but again, you've got to be aware of the pitfalls. I told you before, I don't know if you're just joining, but I'm not a financial advisor. I don't sell these types of investments. I used to be in-house counsel to a brokerage firm in the 90s. I saw a lot of really, shady stuff going on. Since then, I've probably seen like 4 or 5 products that I would call suitable. Meaning they don't hold your money and have all these crazy fees since then. But my point is you have to be not just swayed by the allure of, saving money on tuition, but you have to understand also what the potential negatives are too. Pros and cons include, if you're going to sell something, what are the tax consequences? If you're going to sell a 529, there might be a penalty. It could be a couple $100, it could be a few $1,000s. It really depends on your own situation. Once you're putting your money into one of these types of accounts that are exempt, some of them lock you up for 12 months, which to me doesn't seem that bad, like a CD. Others, it could be 7 years, which to me is awful. But, that's just me. Your own situation is, unique to yourself. But you have to ask yourself these questions. What's the suitability in general of what's being recommended to you? You've got to be very skeptical about anyone offering you something. So, I'm just trying to go through some of the common considerations. And last, if you're just applying to a bunch of schools like state schools that don't have money, then, and then rearranging your money and putting it in different buckets and selling it and buying stuff, whatever, it's like rearranging, deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not going to do you any good. It's just an exercise in futility. So that's a big factor also. All right. Are you guys finding this helpful so far? I'm trying to give you a lot of information in a very short period of time. Let me just take a quick drink of water here, and then let me know in chat with another one of those letter Ys. And yeah, I see some good questions here that I'm going to get to. Hello, Pinchy. Taryn had a good question. Julie. All right, Margot saying yes. Julie has a good question. Ron says yes. Pinchy. Annuities are tricky. Any specific annuity? Yeah. All right, everyone's saying yes, though. I'm not being coy. I have no idea what specific annuities work. The reason I'm saying that is because I'm not, even if I did, I wouldn't tell you because I'm not a financial advisor. I don't want to, start giving investment advice because I'm not regulated, that way. But I've seen a lot of bad ones, but I've seen some good ones that will only require you to lock your money up for 12 months. And, I referred all my clients to my friend Harry, who's in my office in Jericho. And he's the one to talk to about that stuff. So if anyone wants information at the end of this, I'm gonna tell you how you can book some time with me to talk about your situation. That's certainly one of the things people ask me about all the time. Let's get into the Fafsa. Okay, so every college in the country, if you want money from them, requires the Fafsa, and some of them, not all, require you to file a Fafsa, which is the free application for federal student aid. Fafsa. Some people say FAFSA. They are not right. They are dumb. Unless you say that. Everyone else besides you, dumb. It's FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. Clearly I have issues. I'm crotchety, but anyway, some colleges want you to complete financial aid forms to also be considered for merit-based aid too. So like NYU is an example. They want you to do the forms even if they're going to laugh at you, which they tend to do. They're one of the stingiest colleges out there. It's about 102 questions. It's primarily used to give federal funds to low-income families, meaning $50,000, $60,000 max. And sometimes we see those families not getting everything they should get. It's relatively straightforward on its face when you're doing it. However, I showed you that schematic before. There's 1,100 pages of regulations behind the FAFSA. Every year there seems to be some kind of glitch. Pearl had a nightmare last year with it pulling incorrect information in from the IRS website. So it's just not as easy as it's not always as easy as it appears. And I showed you this before. That's the regulatory scheme behind the easy form. Now, there's another form, and this again, I'm still in the gross oversimplification mode here. You'll thank me. The CSS profile is used by about 400 or so colleges in addition to, not in lieu of, but in addition to the FAFSA. So you have to know what forms each college requires, and that's another mistake that people make a lot is they don't realize what's required, how to get the money, or when. That's another mistake. They file late. So it's about 200 questions. It's is it 23 pages? Do you know? I think it's more. It's at least 23 pages. It's like a small phone book. If you print it out, it's a lot. And it's used primarily by colleges that have their own institutional endowments for their funds. It's not federal money. It's really more from colleges that have large endowments, mostly private colleges. And it is not, the FAFSA is deceptively straightforward looking. The profile is not, so you won't be fooled that way. And it's much more invasive because it counts more stuff against you, which I mentioned a few slides ago. Your annuities aren't all exempt, and you disclose your retirement accounts on the profile, and business owners have a lot more disclosures. This is just one screenshot. I don't know how well this is going to show up on your screen, but these are a bunch of questions that I just want to read a couple to you from the CSS profile. Here we go. Enter the amount your parents have in their cash savings and checking accounts as of today. Enter the total value of your parents' assets held in the names of the students, brothers and sisters who are under age 19 and not college students. What is the total current market value of your parents' investments? Do not include blah, 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 because they asked for that later. What do your parents owe in their investments? What is the current market value of your parents' home? What do your parents owe in their home? What year was the purchase? What is the purchase price? What do you notice? So on and so forth. So what do you notice about this? Who's paying attention? Who's supposed to be filling out this form? Just type it in chat. I'm going to take one more sip. Right? I'm talking to you parent to parent about filling out these forms, but when you look at the profile, the complicated form, guess who fills it out? I'll wait. Who's sharp? Yeah, Will. Correct. Sherry, Ruth, Rick, Margot. Yeah, you're all right. Yeah. Can you imagine telling your kids, well, this is how much I have saved. there's another question. There's a lot of other questions, like how much do your parents think that they can afford for 1 year? Do you anticipate any help from friends or family paying for college? Here's how I answer that one. Ready? I'm an orphan. No, you have to say, don't give away the store. But don't vaguely promise, I got money for the kid, don't worry about it. To me, that doesn't rise to the level of anticipated help. That it's not a check that cleared. So I say no to all those. How much can you afford? Pearl always puts whatever the expected family contribution is from the Fafsa or maybe less. Don't put zero, but don't put like $50,000. Do like 10 grand or something. Those questions are just designed to trap you. All right. So now let's talk about a few more mistakes. And there's two types of mistakes. There are mistakes of omission and mistakes of commission. Commission and omission. So an omission is leaving out something or not knowing something, and a mistake of commission is doing something actively. So these are just a couple. I've already talked about some of these. Oversharing, big mistake, not only on social media and dinner conversations sometimes, but it's also in the financial aid forms. If you put down stuff, I mentioned this already. If when you're writing, filling out the field, having your investments, and you include stuff that you shouldn't include, like your retirement accounts, it's not a dumb mistake, by the way. It's an easy mistake to make. We have, I told you, a bunch of accountants and financial advisors and lawyers and people who are very good at paperwork who are afraid that they'll screw this up, or who actually have screwed this up when they didn't use us, and they lost money because of that. So that's an example of oversharing information that shouldn't go on there. You can very easily blow a deadline, because you can look at the Fafsa and it'll say, hey, your deadline is, well, maybe not hey, but your deadline is June 30th, but the college financial aid priority deadline probably the previous November or December or February or something like that. So you need to look at each college's priority deadline, and they're not easy to find on the websites. So that's a big mistake that people make. Another one, this is really two mistakes in one, but it's the same type of mistake, just getting stuff wrong in terms of date of birth or social security numbers. A lot of times when Pearl's doing all these financial aid forms, she's always pulling information right from the tax return, and sometimes it gets spit back after she files from the Department of Education, and they'll say that you have the social security number doesn't match up or something like that, and she'll go back and check the tax return, and she entered everything incorrectly. The problem is that the accountant has been using the wrong social security number for years. So you have to really be hyper vigilant and spazzy about checking everything: dates of birth, social security numbers, mixing up kid stuff and parent stuff because the forms bop around. That's another mistake that people make. A lot of times they don't know what forms to file. That information is also on each college's website. You've got to be very vigilant about that. Just understand that even little clerical errors can have huge negative money-losing consequences. Even the innocuous mistakes, don't blow them off. Don't be, in the rest of life, who cares if you don't make your bed in the morning, or you make a right on red a little too late without a camera around or something. But in financial aid, even little mistakes can literally cost tens of thousands of dollars. So you can't do these forms at the last minute. You can't rush through them. You've got to be very precise. All right. 2 years ago, there was a change about the look-back period for the Fafsa. And when I say look-back, I'm talking about income right now. So now, if you have someone graduate in 2019, the income that counts, that's going to form the basis of your financial aid forms, is what they call prior or 2 years ago, which is 2017. So your tax returns from 17 count for 2019 graduates. If you have someone graduating in 2020, then it's your 2018 tax returns. You get it. And I said this before, the look back applies to income. It does not apply to the rest of the form, including where you have savings. So what these changes mean for you is that if you are sheltering money, if you're moving money around and you're going to sell stuff and you're going to possibly have tax consequences that are going to show up on your tax return, you want to do it before that base year. So you want to do it before the 2 years before. So a lot of times people say, well, I have a sophomore, I feel like I'm doing things kind of early. And I'll say, you're really not that early for two reasons. Number one, if you have any stuff that's going to flow through to your tax returns, the best year to take care of it is before you have to disclose it on your base year. And the second thing is, frankly, once your kid hits high school, they're starting to create a body of work that's in terms of extracurricular activities and classes taken and summer stuff and everything else that will ultimately be judged by the time they are seniors. But you may not have your meeting with your guidance counselor in high school until like the end of your sophomore year, the beginning of your junior year. So 2 years after you've begun creating a body of work and made choices and decisions that will have ramifications when you're being judged by an admissions officer. So it's really, to me, it's not too early if you have a 9th grader or a 10th grader and 11th grader. You still have plenty of time in most cases, but the later you wait, the fewer options you have. So yeah, I think if you get this stuff done before your base year, you won't have a paper trail. And I mentioned this, the body of work starts in 9th grade or even earlier. Okay. Now we're going to talk about merit money. There's more, I mentioned this before, there's more merit money than need-based money. My recommendation is, or just observation, you can decide what to do with this or not to do with this, is apply to schools that are not only these reach dream schools that you have to beg, borrow, and scratch and claw your way into, but schools where they're going to want you. So if you look at all the kids who are admitted the previous year at a given school, and you look at their median scores and grades, and you can do the math and figure out, based on the number of kids who are admitted, how you compare. If you're in the top 25% or better against that cohort, you have a really good chance not only getting in, but getting money from them. And it's okay to be the big fish in a small pond, particularly if you're going to go to grad school later, where you're more likely to have a higher GPA as a big fish. You definitely have a better shot at getting money at a school that you were lucky to get into, and so forth. So don't think of it as settling. If there are any kids watching this, think of it as being smart and strategic and playing the long game, not the short game, not the rear window sticker bragging rights game, playing the long game. Okay. And I think it's a great idea to apply to colleges that compete with each other, because then instead of you chasing the schools around, you can kind of engineer things so they do it to you. And understand, I mentioned this a couple times, but I'm repeating it again, private schools tend to be more generous. All right, now let's get into a negotiation case study. This is Rick. Rick usually doesn't dress like this. He owns a wings restaurant in Port Washington right near us. I recommend the garlic, honey garlic. And this was, a while ago. This was 6 years ago, I think. And he initially received a pretty good offer from his daughter's first choice college, which is kind of hard to see. $23,000 and change. But that wasn't enough for him. He needed more money. The school was, it's even more expensive now, but he wanted more money. So I'm going to walk you through generally how to negotiate, and then I'm going to do the case study. So first of all, a lot of people think, I didn't even know that I could ask for more money. The answer is, yeah, you can. So just understand that if you don't ask, you don't get. The sports cliches, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. That was supposedly said by Wayne Gretzky. So always ask for more money. There's really no downside to do that. It really helps if you have other offers from schools that compete with the school in question that you want more money from. That's a great leverage to have. If you have information they don't already know, like if you were going to say something like, we need more money because we live in suburban Long Island and it's very expensive. They know it's expensive. That's not new information. They didn't give you the first time. They're just going to roll their eyes and say, sorry, no. Always be on the same side of the table, not across the table. It's not really a negotiation, even that's what I call it. It's really more of an appeal. You want to be non-adversarial and be very borderline obsequious. Think Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver. Don't be entitled. Be polite. And you need to include all stakeholders. So here's what I mean by that. So in Rick's case, his daughter's first choice was USC. And by that, I mean Southern Cal. I don't mean new USC, which is, it's not new, but somehow became USC, South Carolina. University of Southern California. The Trojans, if you will. Not the Gamecocks. Trojans. So many jokes that I'm twisting myself into knots to not say. Must control self. Okay. So Alexis, when she was a junior and we were starting to work together in the beginning of her junior year, I said to Rick, you should consider applying to some schools that USC competes with. And he said, well, she doesn't really want to go anywhere else in California. And I said, no, I mean, she was applying as a communications major. So I said, Syracuse has a great communications program, Newhouse, and there are a few other schools. Let's apply to some of those schools too, just to try to solicit an offer from them so we have that in our hip pocket, because I think you'll do pretty well, based on her grades and scores and all that. So that's what happened. USC had gave a nice offer, but Alexis got offers from these two other schools. So we showed USC these two other offers, and we wrote a letter, which I will outline to you. And this is exactly what happened. Crickets. Nothing happened. There was a big problem. And this went on, this dragged on. What was it? Rick forgot to include all stakeholders. So the gist of the letter is, thank you very much for your very generous offer. This is Alexis's top choice school. She would be thrilled to go there. However, I'm very concerned about college costs. I'm concerned about my ability to be able to afford to send her there. And, we're being forced to consider these other schools that, frankly, came in with much better financial aid offers. So if there's any way, and I'm attached, so we show them the offers. If there's any way at all that you could possibly either meet or even exceed these other offers, then I can assure you that we'll rush in our housing deposit. That's really the gist of it. The problem was he didn't remember, and I caught him on video so I can prove this. He didn't remember that I had told him that he needs to also send the letter to admissions, not only to financial aid, but to admissions, because admissions are not the bean counters that financial aid officers are. Admissions cares about the ratio of kids who are admitted who actually show up. It's called the yield. And if it takes a few extra bucks to get a kid to come, then they may loosen the purse strings a little bit. So that was what he forgot to do. So he quickly, once he realized this, because I pointed out to him in a very blunt way, he rushed the same letter that he'd sent previously only to financial aid, and he rushed it to admissions, and they called him, I think the same day, if I remember the story right, and they said, hey, we didn't know about this, tell me, give us some more detail. And then they said, well, who are you working with in financial aid? And Rick said, I don't know, I can't get that to anyone. They said, oh no, you're probably with the wrong person. I'm going to escalate this, and you're going to talk to the right guy. So lo and behold, Rick got a phone call either that day or the next day from the right person in the financial aid office, who asked him a few questions, mostly having to do with the value of his house and the other offers from the other schools. And they quickly revised the offer, and they moved it from $23,000 to $53,000 and change, which was an increase of $30,000 for that year, and it continued for each of the other 3 years after this. So there was like $120,000 swing just from negotiating. So it really helps to have additional offers. Okay, business owners. This is just a couple of slides. If you own a business, you want to pay attention, because there's another loophole that I'm going to illustrate by telling you a story. Business owners are treated differently in the financial aid forms. There are more disclosures, but there's also some advantages. So here's a story about Tina, who actually lives in our district, and she called me after a lot of this had happened, which usually is not so helpful, because my hands are kind of tied once the die is cast. I think I just mixed some metaphors there. So her daughter got into her top choice school, which is NYU, which is pretty stingy, but she also got into some other private schools, but she received 0 across the board, and she thought something was wrong. I said, I don't know, what you did. I don't even think I can help you at this point. She said, I'll just pay you to come look at my forms. I really feel like I made a mistake. So we sat down, and I actually saw it right away. So I asked her 2 questions. I said, one, so what percentage of the business do you own? She was, I think, 50-50 with her husband, Jeff. I asked her how many employees she had. And she told me, they're a pretty big firm. They have all this equipment. They do excavation work for the county. But they had maybe 18, 20, 22 employees. I said, okay. What I knew is this exemption right here, which I know you can't read, so I blew it up here. Business value does not include the value of a small business if your family owns and controls more than 50% and has 100 or fewer employees. That's the important part. Her business employed 20-ish employees. She took a value when she did the forms based off of her financial statements, which totally makes sense, but not in the bizarre world of financial aid. So she was able to, I was able to say, listen, the value of your business is really zero, not the artificially high amount that you put on your forms. So what happened next was we, meaning Pearl, corrected her financial aid forms and resubmitted them, and I wrote an appeal explaining all this type of stuff, and NYU reevaluated it, and she got $25,000 from NYU per year. So far, unless we saw her a few months ago, it's $75,000 that she is up. So remember that if you're self-employed, the value of your business is almost always zero. And if you employ more than 100 people, but you're firing a bunch of people tomorrow, don't mention my name. Okay. I'm going to wrap up here by talking about divorced and separated families. Understand that there's one appropriate family member, parent, to file a Fafsa, and that is the custodial parent. It is not the non-custodial parent. And the custodial is not necessarily the parent who takes the tax deduction, who declares the kid as a dependent on tax returns. Two totally separate things. There's Department of Education rules and there's IRS rules. Totally separate. Now, to round out the discussion, there are some CSS profile colleges. Remember, there's 400 colleges that take the CSS profile. A chunk of them, maybe a third, maybe more, require the non-custodial parent to also fill out a profile and disclose their information. This changes. It changes like every year. There's new changes about not just the profile, but all these forms. So from year to year, one school may require or not require it. And the second thing is, I don't think that they count the non-custodial parent dollar for dollar the same way they count the custodial parent. So it's just, you're not dead in the water if you have a non-custodial parent who makes a lot more money and you have to disclose that, or that non-custodial parent has to fill out the forms and submit them to the college. Not necessarily game over at that point. So another question we get sometimes is, well, what happens if the ex-husband, the dad, it's always a deadbeat dad, is not going to cooperate with filling out the forms? Then you tell the financial aid office, and 9 times out of 10 they'll say, okay, just sign this, affidavit of non-cooperation or something, and you don't have to disclose that information. But occasionally, some colleges will say, you know what, we need his information. Tell him that we can't evaluate your son or your daughter for financial aid unless we have his information. So it's a case-by-case thing, it's a school-by-school thing. Just understand, if nothing else, that most of the time if you have any flexibility, you can always go with the lower income and lower asset family member if that's the parent that the kid resides with the majority of time. It doesn't matter who declares the kid on tax returns. It's really about the domicile of the kid, where the kid lives 50% or more of the time. So if you have flexibility, occasionally we see that with our clients. Not always, but occasionally. So at this point, we're wrapping up here, and I think, I'm going to get to the questions right now, but I think I've given you sort of a high level, one-on-one level understanding of how to get more money from colleges and a lot of pitfalls to look out for. And you really have two choices, So there are some current clients who are on this presentation, but if you're not a client and you're thinking about all this stuff, I think you have a leg up to be able to implement some of the advice that I've given you, and you already know a lot more than a lot of accountants and certainly guidance counselors. But you may want some help. The choices are, you can either do it on your own, just kind of wing it, or you can use an expert to guide you with a tested and proven system that's been around for, we've been doing this 18 years. If you have questions about, can I get any scholarships or financial aid? Is it even possible? Am I even looking at the right colleges? Can my son or daughter even get in anywhere decent? Or sometimes it's, if you're really honest, I don't even know the right questions to ask. I'm so overwhelmed. Then what I can offer you is, and I see that Pearl already put this offer up, you are more than welcome to take me up on my offer to waive our normal fee of $249 and do a phone call with me for what we call a college strategy session. I have cut back very severely on the amount of spots that I make available just because we're just overwhelmed with referrals and just growing our business, but I still want to be able to help people, without charging them. So as of now, we're making 5 spots available per week. Instead of paying $249, you can avoid that. And the gist of the college strategy session is really to have a candid conversation about whether there's any hope for you, whether we can help you or not, and to see if we're potentially a good fit. You don't have to make a decision. There's nothing to buy. I just like to keep it very casual and blunt and honest. And, we can help everyone, but I don't want you to feel like there's any pressure. The only catch is that if I can't help you, I'm going to tell you that, and that's probably 1 out of 3-ish clients, potential clients that happens to. Sometimes people are very skeptical. Scott Sanders said he was saying I was nonchalant, that he thought that it might be a scam, and I told him what he ended up saying was that his son went to GW, this is a long time ago, on monies 100% from my involvement. And he really liked it when I told him I get my clients 5 times the amount in their investment with me. That's return on investment, and I love hearing stuff like that. So that was very cool. I told you before, we help kids get into any type of school, including MIT. This is a text from a Harvard client. This is a girl who got into Yale. She was, I couldn't have done any of your help on my application. But I said before, we can't help everyone. Here's who. This may be offensive. I'm sorry. Here's who we can't help. We can't help these types of moms. What are these called? Right. Helicopter moms. Don't book if you're a helicopter or know-it-all parent. I just don't want to butt heads with you. It's going to happen. If you have an apathetic or uncoachable kid, little entitled or whatever, please, that's, there's other college advisors that will take you. And I just don't want to deal with that. I'm sorry. I don't mean to but I am. And I don't want parents who don't understand the concept of return on investment, meaning we're not low cost, we're not El Cheapo, we're not super expensive, but we're not, we're right in the middle. We charge anywhere from $3,000 to more than $15,000 for our services, depending on what families get from us. And it could be, just help with finances. It could be help with college advising. We also do test prep. We also do career and majors advising. And there's a few other things, but we charge for it because of the value that we deliver. So anyone doesn't understand that concept of return on investment, meaning you get what you pay for, then we don't really want them. And frankly, even though we are expensive, we have a lot of low-income families or people who come up with the money because they realize how important this is. It's kind of like if you needed an operation, and you were told you need to come up with 10 grand, or you need to get out of jail and you have to come up with 10 grand in post bail, you'd find a way to do it, right? I think that, figuring out what the hell you want to do with the rest of your life and going to college and graduating without debt is a very important thing too. And that's, the results that we're able to get. I shared some of those with you. I think that's why, it's important to understand the value of the advice we offer. But we're definitely not right for everyone. So if we're not right for you, that's fine. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm just trying to state the case for us. Services include help with financial aid and scholarships, doing the forms, test prep, negotiating financial aid awards, college essay advising, majors and careers, resume enhancement, meaning marketing, meaning improving your position to get in, helping with the college applications. We do all kinds of boot camps for clients and a lot more. And if you want to talk about it, please go ahead and book us. My closing deep thoughts are all the stuff when you step back and you think about it, it can make the difference between affording your kid's dream college versus letting her down and saying, I can't send you to the school that you deserve. And just be very careful about this, whether you use us or not. To understand that one little mistake can cost you literally thousands in lost aid that you deserved. And we represent, in my opinion, in Pearls, an investment in college success without the stress. That's our whole thing. And my last testimony that I'll share is from a client of mine from a long time ago, Beth Sova, who's now out in Houston, Texas. And this made me think, I think this is the real business that we're in. From the moment I walked into your office, I felt an enormous weight was lifted off my shoulders. Thank you for all that you've done for my precious girl. So I really appreciate, Pearl and I really appreciate hearing things like this. Much more rewarding than the money and that we make from this business, the emotional capital. Thank you very much for attending this presentation. I am now going to get into my questions. Okay. Pearl, you have questions posted for me?
I do, and they're in order. You can start at the top.
Let's go from top to bottom. Okay, cool. All right. So, last sips. Okay. Pearl said something vulgar to me. I'm not going to print that. Thank you, Pearl. Are 529 plans in different child's name all added together? The answer is yes. The 529 on the Fafsa is considered a parent asset. So if you're the custodian, you are the custodian for all of your kids. And what that means is that because you can switch beneficiaries between the kids, between and among the kids, colleges know that. So that's why you have to list them all. All right, I put on my old glasses here. How do families with $500,000 income get anything from an elite school? Okay, well that's interesting. So most of the elite schools like Ivies and all that are need-based and not merit-based. Ivy League colleges ostensibly do not give out merit-based scholarships. Now, I made this throwaway comment before that colleges can do whatever they want, and we've seen that happen, but it's very unusual. It's not even worth talking about. But they can figure out, if a kid's an athlete, somehow they're going to show more need than if they weren't an athlete compared to another kid whose family may have the same income and all that. So if you make a lot of money, your best bet, and you want to save money on college, your best bet is not the elite schools. I'll just be very blunt. If income is 200 and one of the parents is 65, would that help to get a discount? That's from Julia. Yeah, that does help. The older you are, the more eligible you are. So that age is one of those factors. That's why I highlighted for you. That's a very good question. Cherry, do you recommend spending down the 529 first for those who are not eligible for any aid? Well, if that's going to make you more eligible, then that's definitely something you should look at. I would stop short of making a recommendation here. But listen, you have the 529 to pay for college, so why not use it? So I think above all, that's what it's there for. But if your income is at such a point where if you didn't have the 529, then you would otherwise qualify, then yeah, I think I would do that. I would spend it down quickly, or maybe look at even selling it. All right. Terry, my eyes are getting bleary here. Is there any consideration for medical hardship? So in terms of when I was talking about appealing, I said if you can introduce new information to a college on appeal for them to consider, they may adjust your award. And a medical hardship falls squarely in the category of new information they couldn't possibly know about from the financial aid form. So in other words, what you'd say is, look, I know our income looks one way, and in the formulas, we appear to be eligible. However, we had all these other expenses that you couldn't possibly know about because of unreimbursed, medical expenses or, whatever. Could you please take another look at my file, my eligibility? So that is absolutely in that category. David, is there a real life example? Pearl, I don't know what that means. I think I did give a bunch of real life examples. Is a child CD exempt? No, not at all. Anything in a child's name counts against you, even worse. Julie, are you going to get the business owners? Pearl, I did.
No.
What? You're just putting them in? Can you edit them?
Sure.
All right. What if there's been a marked reduction in income from the eligibility? She wasn't nice? Is that what you're saying? All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, can't please everyone. Feel free to not as another watch if you're crotchety. What if there's been so Will, this is a very good one. What if there's been a marked reduction in income from the eligibility for FAFSA and the year the kid starts college? So that is another classic example of an appealable bit of new information that I was talking about, just like the medical expenses, they couldn't possibly know. So in other words, the argument could be, look, I know we looked one way. So this year, for example, in, I guess April, I wrote probably 100 letters of appeal, I stopped counting after like 103. And many of them were kind of along the lines of, okay, I know that you're looking at my tax return from 2016, but I was actually laid off from work, or my business, went south at the end of that year. And since then, I've been making low or little or no income. And that's not reflected on the financial aid forms, but that's my reality. So that was something that happened in the not so distant past. Can you possibly take another look at my eligibility? And frequently colleges will say, okay, send us proof. If you were pink slipped, if you have a severance agreement or something like that, that is a very, very real appealable issue. And you should definitely bring that up if you have that scenario. So thank you for that question. Dennis, what are the state penalties for spending down a 529 for private high school tuition? I don't think there are any at this point that I've seen. Because the 529, you get a deduction off of your federal taxes. You might get a deduction off your state taxes depending on what state you're in. But I don't know so far that I haven't seen anything about that. But that's a very interesting question to me. Thank you for that one. I wish I could give you a better answer. Julie, FAFSA isn't the issue. It's the CSS for those who seek the top schools. Okay, that's not really a question. Pearl, she would edit Pearl, but she's right. David, is there a way to prevent our kids from seeing our financial? No response?
No.
Just gnashing your teeth? Okay. David, is there a way to prevent our kids from seeing our financial information on the financial aid forms? Yes. Don't let them do it. They don't, most kids will never know what the hell you're writing, what you're filling out. So you do everything. That's what I recommend, actually. David, public schools don't require CSS. I don't remember ever seeing a CSS when I applied for FAFSA when I went to college. Yeah, don't think this is the same as when you went to college. It's definitely different. But there are some, very few, but there are some, Pearl. Okay, there's some CSS profile school. There are some state schools like UVA, University of Michigan, North Carolina, and there's probably a few others that are state schools that do require the CSS profile. The bottom line is you got to check with each school. Absolutely.
And it changes from year to year.
And it can change from year to year. Okay. David, which schools require the CSS? That is a school by school. You can look on the College Board website, and you'll ultimately get to a list of schools that require the CSS profile. It's several hundred. Katie, but not all private schools. That's important to know. Davis. Okay, Pearl. I've heard that filing as head of household can make life difficult with FAFSA. Is that true? That is probably not true, right, Pearl? It depends on the situation. Yeah. That's an advanced level question. Yeah, it's like, is the 529 good or bad? It can be good, it can be bad. Kevin, is a state school, none of this matters. State schools give money, it's just they give federal money for low-income families, and they give merit money for a qualified out-of-state kids too. They'd rather give $5,000 or $10,000 off to an out-of-state kid who's going to class up their rankings, their grades and their scores. Mary Lou, my son's a freshman this coming September. Can I start sheltering now? Yeah, I think the sooner you do it, the better. You want to keep it off. So if he's going to graduate in, I guess, 2021, it sounds like your base year is 2019. So this is the year to make some moves if there are going to be some tax consequences because they won't appear on your 2019 classes. Going to be a freshman is coming. Oh, that could be in college. Okay, got it. Sure. I mean, you can shelter for the following year because you reapply for financial aid every year. Yeah, I just automatically assume as a freshman in high school. Okay. Ron, does Ivy League also have these merit funds? They don't call them merit funds. They claim they don't give merit funds, but we've seen them give merit funds. They're not supposed to, though. Gary, the problem is that it seems that every school, even the ones that are not considered to be prestigious, report average GPA of 3.8 and median 50% test scores, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, I'm the only one whose kid isn't a genius. That's right. You have you should give your kid a special test. No, you're just looking probably at the wrong schools, but there's a lot of grade inflation for GPA. One of my jokes that I say all the time, I said today in the office, is that it seems like everyone applying to college is a leader. There are no followers applying to college. But, you have to you have to look outside the top 30 colleges. That's my suspicion of what you're doing. Julie, but the 100-employee rule doesn't apply to CSS schools, does it? Right, that is correct. However, I gave that case study of Tina who got more money from NYU and a bunch of other schools. They are CSS profile schools. So in my experience, the value of the way it's supposed to work in terms of how a CSS profile school looks at a business value is they will take a certain amount and discount it, and then they'll go ahead and use the 5%. So the problem is that there's no published formula. So at a recent conference that I was at, I actually asked someone about that specific scenario too. I said, so let's say your business is worth $200,000. How much are they going to write down that value before they assess the parent contribution of 5%? And they said, usually somewhere around blah, blah. They didn't have a straight answer. But my point is that almost all the time, the value of a business should be either zero or very low, and it's not going to count against you unless you inflate it artificially. So good catch on that one. Lisa, what would be considered a competing school with Wash U? So Wash U, is one of these elite Midwestern private colleges, just so you can look at some of those other schools like, I don't know, Chicago or something. But they also compete with, a lot of schools on the East Coast that are similar. If you're applying as a writing kid compared to something else, you can look at other colleges that have writing programs. So that's how I would look at it. And sometimes schools, it's easy to figure out they compete with each other because they're in the same conference athletically. Cheryl, what about if one parent is deceased? So that doesn't necessarily get factored in the formulas that way directly, but indirectly it comes down to income and savings. And a lot of times widows of of a spouse have low income and high assets. And then that, which is actually the perfect storm for us to be able to reposition assets and get them a lot more aid. So we have a client last year. I won't say her name, but her daughter got into a very prestigious liberal arts college. She's going to play and she was sitting on a lot of money, and she worked, but she had a very modest income, but she did a net price calculator. She wasn't going to get any money. So we worked with her to reposition her assets, and she ended up getting, I think $25,000 or $30,000 from that school. So she was very happy, and that's kind of like a perfect storm, but that's a very common scenario. So you can get more money, but it's not necessarily because someone's deceased or not. It's just based on how you look financially. Carrie Taylor, I printed out PDF of the Fafsa. Can't find where to inform that a parent is deceased. I don't know where it is. It's on there, but it is on there. When you register, is it when you register, Pearl? It's there somewhere. Okay. Just trust us. Lucy R, does cost of attendance include room and board or not? Yeah, it does. Cost of attendance is everything. Room and board, tuition, everything. Julie, CSS profile schools are not likely to have merit for parents who have high income or own businesses with high net worth, even though they have less than 100 employees. We've found that not to be true. So I'm not, you may have your own experiences, but we have found that not to be true at all. In fact, the CSS profile schools tend to give the most merit money, actually. Katie, Pearl, big age difference between parent, military family, rental, property, retirement. I think, Zeph, can you just answer that privately, I guess? You know what I'm talking about? There's a question for you in there. But that is, the rental property may or may not help you. I'm sorry, it's going to hurt you, but you might be able to do something with it. Carrie, do families have to send in copies of bank statements and other supporting documents? That's a good question. Only if you're asked, only if you're verified. Most of the time, it won't happen, but there's at least a 30% chance that it could happen from one school. Cheryl, I fought the director of financial aid of the school and received more grant money. Nice. Pearl really helped me. Cool. So it sounded like Pearl helped you with a fist fight. Pearl's very aggressive as a former prosecutor. I don't know if people always know. We got to start telling people more that, that you were a former prosecutor in Queens County. She did hearings against mob lawyers and stuff. She's tough. Don't piss her off. But good, Cheryl. It's cool. Laura, my house is paid for and I have 7 figures in savings. Am I paying full sticker price? No, not necessarily. We have plenty of clients who don't pay full sticker price who have very similar situations. Depends on your income, depends on what schools you're applying to. Sometimes you can reposition things so that you're going to improve your eligibility. So you're definitely not dead in the water. Lucy, my son's going to a sophomore year. I guess that's college. Our income changed before he started. Financially is aware. We are working with financially, but not admissions. Should we now send info to admissions, even though he's a sophomore? I think it's an exercise in futility at this point. Admissions, they want to bribe you to come, but once you're there, they know they have you. So wish I could give you a better answer. Rob, with the new tax act, has it created new planning opportunities that were not available previously? A little bit. For example, the thing about spending $10,000 of a 529 towards college, towards high schools, private high school, private secondary school, that could be helpful. David, screw college. What's the number to that truck driving school? What's funny is we have conversations like this all the time because we have, so Pearl sees everyone's tax returns and financials. We have doctors, lawyers, and accountants. We have, truck drivers, construction contractors, auto body guys, electricians, you name it. And more often than not, it's those, kind of blue collar truck driver type guys who, they may have a good income, but they have a lot of assets. A lot of times they're doing really well financially, better than the first category. So it's a funny comment and it's a bittersweet comment. Thank you. Thank you for that moment. Stacy, if you get a scholarship for freshman years, it's similar for the next 3 years. You have to reapply every year. Okay. Need-based aid, you reapply every year. Scholarships, which are merit-based, usually you get them every year, provided that you hit the minimum GPA that's required. So there's a distinction there. That's good. David, do kids need to sign the financial aid forms? Yeah. There's a, what is it now? The FSA ID and the PIN? I don't know.
No, FSA ID usually.
But does a kid sign the forms? In effect, they are signing the forms.
Electronically.
Okay. Yep. Ron, your rule of thumb is that the income portion of the EFC was 30%. So you have very low assets but high income. Will you still be expected to contribute at least 30% of your income? In other words, will low assets not add to the EFC or possibly reduce it? They're looked at independent of each other. So there's no, they just get added together. So if you have a high income and low assets, that's not going to help you or hurt you any more than if you had high income and high assets. It's all about each individual component. So that's kind of a situation where you're not going to qualify for need-based aid generally because it's a lot easier to reposition assets, but you can't really do anything about income unless you want to risk going to jail. And I just don't recommend that for most of my clients. So, you go away, your kid goes to college, you go away yourself. Hey, meet Bubba, your new roommate. So, yeah, it's not going to, they're not going to say, oh, you make $300,000, but you have $3 saved, so we're going to lower your EFC, to $20,000. Not at all. It just won't penalize you as much as if you had more money saved. Okay, so I think that we are almost done here. Pro, you got anything else that came in? Okay. All right. So listen, if you have some, I said this before, but if you have any one-on-one, not for public type of questions for us, and you're interested in potentially exploring working together, see if we're a good fit and all that, then please feel free to take me up on this offer. We had a lot of people register for this. I still see about 70-something people on. We had 160-something registered. So, I think those spots are going to fill up very, very quickly. So if you are interested at all, go ahead and click the college strategy session offer. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching. It's been about an hour and a half, so I want to respect everyone's time. I know you had other things to do as opposed to sit in front of your computer. So thanks a lot for spending this time with me. And on behalf of Pearl, thanks a lot, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Andy Lockwood. Don't forget to visit our website, lockwoodcollegeprep.com, for some more free, valuable information on how you can multiply your chances of admission to your dream colleges and qualify for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of fat, juicy scholarships along the way. Visit lockwoodcollegeprep.com for information on our free upcoming workshops and webinars, and to download a copy of our #1 best-selling book, How to Pay Wholesale for College. That's lockwoodcollegeprep.com. Bye-bye.